All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hello, good afternoon. My name is Sarah Moldavsky, and we are very happy to have you joining us here today for the Youth Activism Workshop portion of our series, How Did We Get Here? Conversations about race, anti-Blackness, and identity. This is just one workshop in our larger series. In the chat, I'm putting a link to the other events, so please check those out, and you can see that in the chat now. So welcome. I'm going to just go over the logistics real quick. This is webinar based, which means that I cannot see your videos. We will not be speaking, but we will be asking lots of questions. Oh, sorry, y'all. We will be asking lots of questions, so answer them by typing your answers into the chat. This will be followed by a meeting style conversation for parents. So please stick around. We have Tabari Coleman, who is an excellent facilitator, who will be talking to you about current events and how to talk to your children about that. And embrace the chaos. As we all know, sometimes the internet can be unreliable. When we're all working from home, there's a lot of uncontrolled factors, dogs barking, kids. So we're just embracing it and rolling with the flow. So again, before we get started, I want to go over some ground rules. And this is what we call our Brave Space rules. Now, you might have heard of safe space. This is similar, but a little bit different. When talking about these topics, we can't always guarantee that it's going to feel warm and fuzzy or safe. It can get a little icky, but that doesn't mean that we're not going to be respectful and that we're not going to treat each other with kindness. So these are some rules I want us to keep in mind. Please listen to others, be kind and respectful. Ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. Ask all the questions you want. You can type them into the chat. Take turns. We want to make sure that all voices can be heard. We want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to talk and everybody gets a chance to be heard. And use I statements. We're going to be speaking from our perspectives today. So I will be speaking as Sarah Moldavsky, so I will be using I statements. And here's a little bit of what we're going to be doing today. So we are going to be defining terms. We're going to be learning about what an activist is and what actions they take. We're going to learn about intersectionality, and we're going to be thinking about issues you care about and how you can advocate for them. So I am not alone here today. I am joined by 4 fabulous educators from both our K-12 and early childhood department. And I'm going to toss it over to them to take it from here, and I will let them introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carla, and I'll be one of the educators working with you today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Victoria, and I'll also be with you today.
Hi, guys. I'm Ellie, and I'll be seeing you shortly.
And my name is Alyssa, and I will be starting you guys off today. Okay. All right. So guys, I want to start you guys off today with defining some terms. So I'm going to ask you this question, and again, you can type your answers into the chat. So we want to ask, what do you think of when thinking about rights? What is the definition of rights to you? And I'll give you a few minutes to do that, a couple of minutes. And just to remind you guys that your answers are private and we just appreciate you sharing. Okay, and so we have an answer. The definition of rights is what I am allowed to do, someone said. So that's a good answer, what you're allowed to do. Okay, and then we have someone who says, When I think about rights, I think about the Bill of Rights. Good. And how much power they really hold. Very good. Okay, and we'll just take just a matter of seconds longer, just in case anyone else wants to speak up. What do you think about rights? Okay. All right, well, we got some really good answers anyway, so we're gonna go ahead and move on to the definition of rights. So the definition of rights are the freedom to be allowed to do or have certain things. So for a couple of examples, we have the right to vote, right to an education, and the right to freedom. And we have another definition here of discrimination. So discrimination is treating one person or a group of people less fairly than others. So someone could be discriminating you as an individual based on how you look or what your faith may be, or it can be an entire group of people and the identity that that group of people share. So now I have two questions, and I'm going to give you time to answer both of them individually. So I'm going to start with the first one, and again, type your answers into the chat. So when is a time you've seen or learned about a person or a group being treated unfairly compared to other people? And I'll give you a couple of minutes to do that. Okay, so we have an answer here. Not being allowed to go to the school by your house, but a segregated school. That is a very good example of discrimination. And so maybe not being allowed to go to that school by your house because, well, with segregation, it likely would be because of the color of your skin, maybe, and you wouldn't be allowed to go to that school. And we'll give just about 45 seconds left to anyone else who might want to answer that first question. And we have someone who says that they have heard about the right to vote, that women didn't have the right to vote. Okay. Absolutely. That would be discrimination based on their sex alone, right? Girls not being able to play football, wrestling, etc. Yeah. That would be discrimination as well. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move on to the second question. When is a time you or someone around has stood up for themselves or others when they were being treated unfairly? And someone wants to know, do I see the names when you post? I do see the names. However, I have been not using the names just to keep answers private, but if you'd like me to use your name, I can. So again, with that second question, if this is something that you experience personally, you can share that, or if you'd like to kind of give us an example, you can do that as well. And so we have someone that says, I see people today stand up in the store when someone says something racist or mean to a person. Good example. So we have maybe more people today that are standing up in public, standing up for what they think is being unfair to someone else. We have maybe about 45 seconds left. Anyone may want to answer this question. Okay, so I think we can go ahead and move. Oh, hold on. I have one more answer. I've seen a few kids stand up to a bully. I have stood up to him for the kids who were afraid to. Oh, that's awesome. So being a bully, that, to someone, that could be based on discrimination, right? Depending on who you're picking on. So that's an awesome example as well. Okay, so we are going to look at some examples of discrimination in history of St. Louis history. So also when looking at these examples, I want you to see how people responded to discrimination in the form of protests. So with protests, it's making a statement or an action, and it's going to get other people's attention to let them know what is unfair and stating what you think is unfair. And this is also something you can do by yourself, or you can gather people together who believe in the same thing that you do. They have seen this, injustice and or something that's been unfair, and they want to fight with you. So let's look at some of these examples. So this is a picture of a protest that took place outside of Jefferson Bank in 1963, and it lasted for 7 months. And up until the George Floyd incident, it was the largest and most consistent protest in St. Louis history. And this protest was based primarily on unequal hiring practices at Jefferson Bank and Trust Company. They were not hiring African Americans. Look at another one. So this is a protest against segregation. And so the discrimination here was a lot of drugstores, kind of like Walgreens. During this time, during the 1940s and 50s, they had lunch counters inside. So it's like a little miniature diner where you can get ice cream and whatnot. And they refused to serve African-American customers. They could shop at the stores, but they could not sit at this lunch counter and have lunch. So these ladies from the Citizens Civil Rights Committee decided to do a sit-in. So they sat there with their picket signs around their necks, and they just sat there quietly and allowed people to observe them. And that was their statement against discrimination. And this was one of the first sit-ins in the country here in St. Louis in 1944. And here we have a picture of the first Pride Parade in St. Louis, Missouri. And this was in 1980, April 20th, 1980. And this was put on by the Dignity St. Louis organization. And it was their response to discrimination against the LGBTQ community, in which they were experiencing discrimination in the workplace as well as not having the right to be married legally. And so they put on this parade, and it's been an annual tradition ever since, having a Pride Parade in St. Louis. And they marched from Washington University into Central West End. And I'm going to hand it over to Ellie at this point, and she is going to let you know more about the people who go into protest.
Okay, guys, I'm coming. I'm having some technical issues. I need the host to disable me, please. All right. All right, guys, you were just with Alyssa and you talked about rights, discrimination, protesting, and bullying. And you know, those are all actions that an activist would take. Activists are people who take action to make a change in society for what they think is the greater good for everyone. Have you guys ever heard that saying, if you see something, say something? Or when you know better, you do better. Those are actions that an activist would take. All right, guys, so we've talked about activists. Now we're going to look at some of the actions that an activist may take. There are many different actions activists can take. You see the picture, the first picture on the left with the 3 kids, and you see the ladies bending down. Now, to me, it looks like maybe they are donating money or something to the community or to a school. These are actions that an activist can take to help. On the side of that picture, you see a lady, she's lying on the sidewalk, and her sign says, all we wanted was a trial. Well, maybe she didn't get justice. I'm not sure, but I know she is protesting. Now, look at the picture at the bottom. You see the one where there are 3 ladies, and the lady on the far right, her sign says, we don't mind busing, but we want integration. She's saying, you know, I don't mind riding the bus, but I want to be able to sit where I want to sit. I don't want to have to sit at the back of the bus. And the last picture at the bottom right-hand corner, I see kids, I see adults, look like they're holding hands, look like they're showing signs of unity. They are protesting a cause that's very near and dear to their heart. Some actions activists take. Stay strong. Now, I don't mean doing pull-ups, sit-ups. No, staying strong within. You could tell someone in charge. You can tell a teacher. In this picture, look like they've got a picture of a judge, someone in court. You can share your story and educate others. How did we all know about Martin Luther King Jr.? The story was shared and we're able to educate others. You can also be a helper. You don't necessarily have to go out and protest or lie in the sidewalk. You can be a helper. You can be a helper at school, a helper at home. You can also open the door like on this picture. You see the kid in the wheelchair and the other ones are opening the door for him. Or you can read a story to someone, being a helper. Now this one, confront unfair rules. I think for this one, you have to be strong because a lot of us are afraid to confront unfair rules. Just like I heard you guys talking with Alyssa about bullying. Someone said that they stood up. That's right. You were confronting unfair rules, and that's awesome. Now we're going to look closer at stay strong. We're going to be speaking up for yourself and others, not giving up when things are slow. I'm looking at this picture and I see candles. I don't know if this is a vigilant or they're protesting, but you know what? I bet you they weren't out there just for 1 night, 2 nights. Progress is slow sometimes. So you have to stay strong, especially if it's an issue that you care about. You can't give up, you gotta stay strong. Tell someone in charge. Now, in the picture, that's a picture of our former First Lady, Mrs. Hillary Clinton. And she also ran for being the president in 2016. Now, tell someone in charge. It says here, calling or writing letters to politicians. She's a politician. Maybe the school got together, they wrote her a letter and wanted Mrs. Clinton to come visit their school to see what they were doing. Beautiful picture. Share your story and educate others. Okay, say you don't want to march, that's fine. Say you don't want to lie in the sidewalk, that is fine as well. You don't have to do those things. You can post on social media, or you can create a piece of art. Now I'm looking at this picture and I'm looking at the arch, and the wording around the arch is July 14th, Civil Rights, 1964, Percy Green. And in the center of the arch, it says Black Lives Matter. It looks like it's a beautiful day, the sun is shining, but someone is trying to express their emotions. Now, the name Percy Green, you will definitely hear a little bit more about him later on in the program. But remember to share your story and educate others. I know you guys have heard of Martin Luther King, Rosa Parks, right? You know their stories, and that's what we need to continue to do. Be a helper. Remember I said you could help at home, in your community, opening doors, carrying packages. You can have a lemonade stand or an event to raise money to donate a cause. You don't have to march, no. You don't have to protest, no. You don't have to post on social media. You could do something like be a helper. Let's raise money to donate to the community or to our school or to a needing family. That's what being a helper means. Confront unfair rules. You guys are really familiar with this because I heard some of your comments. Protesting in the streets. Now I'm looking at this picture and the wording on the sign says, without justice, there will be no peace. So these people are fighting for a cause, something that's being unfair. They're confronting unfair rules and they are looking for a change. I even see a stroller out there. So I guess it's a little kid is out there as well. See, you don't have to be a grown-up. You could be a kid. You too can be an activist. All right, guys, I got an activity for you guys, okay? Now, we're gonna look at historic St. Louis examples of activism. While you're looking at these photos, I want you to think about what is going on and what actions they are taking. Now, to record your response, we're gonna use a poll to decide what actions they took. So you guys ready? Remember we talked about confronting unfair rules. We've talked about staying strong, tell someone in charge, be a helper. All right, so guys, are you ready? Let's begin. I want you to look at this photo. I want you to think about what actions are these activists taking. Now I see a little fella in the front. It looked like maybe he's about 5 or 6. And he's holding this big sign that says, don't treat our children like prisoners. Look like he's the leader of the pack, right? In the back, there are grown-ups and they're holding signs as well. And their signs are saying, we protest school segregation, meaning they want the schools integrated. They don't just want the Black kids to go to the Black schools and the white kids to go to the white schools. Let's integrate it and let's just have a big community. Now think about what actions are these activists taking? Think about it, guys. Wow, you guys said 50%. Share your story and educate others. That is so right. How else are people going to know what issues you're fighting about if you don't share your stories? Also, being a helper. We're out here, we're a group. We're going to help each other. We're going to lift each other up. And sure, we're going to get tired and we want to go home, but we're going to stay strong. That was awesome, guys. Awesome. Thank you. All right, we're going to move to our next photograph. Now look at this picture, and I want you to really, really look deep into this picture. The picture on the left appears to be two African Americans. Look at their faces. Are they smiling? No. So this must be pretty serious. One person is holding a sign that says, "We matter." And the other one is holding the sign of peace, love. Look at the next one. Look at that painting. As I'm looking at this painting, those big red letters stick out, "Still we rise." And it looks like I'm seeing African-American hands releasing doves into the air, into the beautiful sunshine, meaning there's hope. Still we rise. We're not going to give up. Don't matter how long it takes. We want change. So think about, what actions are these activists taking? Here's your poll. Think about it. Wow. Share your story and educate others. Like 100%. Stay strong, 40%. Be a helper. These are all right. You know, we don't have to use just one action as an activist. Most times we combine them all together. Guys, that was a great job. Thank you for your responses. All righty. Now, you're looking at this picture. You don't know this lady. Well, I'm going to tell you her story. And as I tell the story, I want you to think about what actions are, what actions are these activists taking? Now, the lady on the in the picture, her name is Lucy Delaney. Lucy Ann Delaney was born enslaved in St. Louis, Missouri in 1830. Lucy's mother, Polly, had been born free in the state of Illinois, but she was kidnapped as a child, carried across the Mississippi River and sold. Now she was enslaved. All her life, people had been telling Polly, "Girl, you were born free." So Polly decided to confront unfair rules, and she decided to sue for her freedom. Her attorney was able to convince the jury that she was actually born free. So if she was born free, then her child was free as well. So now Lucy, the lady in the picture, use your imagination. She's only 12 years old, and she was instructed by her enslaver, Mrs. Mitchell, to do the laundry. Lucy was only 12, and she didn't know how to do laundry. Now remember, there were no wash machines and dryers back then, no. Lucy had to do the laundry by hand with a bucket of water and a washboard. Well, she messed up the laundry, and Mrs. Mitchell got angry and threatened to sell Lucy. So Lucy ran, but she was caught. And when she was caught, she was taken to jail and remained in jail for 1.5 years. Now remember, she's only 12. I bet she was afraid. She waited and waited and waited. And finally, her mom, Polly, remember how Polly got her freedom? She confronted unfair rules. She told someone in charge. Well, she helped her daughter to get her freedom. And in February, in 1844, Lucy Ann Delaney was finally free. Now, I know that was a lot of information, but think about the actions and put your response in the poll, please. Remember her story? Come on, guys, you got 10 more seconds before the poll closes. Think about it. Wow. Stay strong, 80%. You got that right. Can you imagine sitting in jail, 12 years old? She had to be strong. Tell someone in charge. That's right. They took it to court. They fought for their freedom. Share your story and educate others. Now I have shared Lucy Delaney's story. Some of you may have heard her story and some of you may have not, but now you know her story. And be a helper. Yes. And I see be a helper only got 20%, but you know what? Being a helper, she helped other people to be able to sue for their freedom as well. Great job, guys. Thank you. Now we're going to look at this last photo, I believe. And you're just looking at a bunch of people standing there. Well, there was a tragic event that occurred in Ferguson. Okay. Now, after the event, the community got together and they said, you know what? We're going to change our community. We're going to make it better for everyone that's living here. So you see in the picture, you've got a clergy, which is a priest or a pastor. You've got a Black man standing up in the back. Female. Matter. We're coming to the community. What actions are you taking? Think about it and put your response in the poll, please.
Hi, I think Ellie's internet went out there for a second. So I'm just gonna say what she said. This is just a meeting for people to make a plan for their activism and to learn how to help people through medical care or being a legal observer. So keep that in mind, and I'm gonna launch the poll.
Wow. Stay strong. Yes. Tell someone in charge. Yes. Share your story and educate others. 43%. Be a helper. 57%. That's right. They all got together for their community. because they wanted to make the community better for everyone. So we're all gonna have a little piece of this pie, and we're gonna all work together to make this new community work. Hey guys, you were great as activists. I hope you continue to be great activists out there. Remember, you don't have to march, you don't have to post, you don't have to line the sidewalk, you don't have to sit in restaurants. You could do a lemonade stand, you can write a letter, you can do whatever pleases your heart, but be an activist. Let's change some things. Well, guys, I'm getting ready to cut out here, but my friend Victoria is going to talk about some issues regarding Intersect. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Miss Ellie. Hi, friends. I hope you all have been having a ton of fun and doing lots of learning. So today I have another fun and big word for you. And that word is intersectionality. It's a big word, right? Well, I'm sure if you break it down, you probably heard one of these words before. So let's see. The word intersect is in this word. Maybe you've heard this in math class, but to intersect is when you have one line and then you have another line that crosses that line somehow, and that is to intersect. You may have also heard the word intersection, maybe when you're driving down the street or taking the bus or walking. It's when you have one street and then another street crosses it. And you know, at intersections, that's where we see our stop signs or our stop lights. So intersectionality is kind of the same idea. It's when different forms of discrimination or unfair treatment, they combine and overlap, they cross. And so people and issues are kind of like puzzle pieces. You know, when you put a piece of puzzle together and finish the whole puzzle, it makes this beautiful picture at the end. So people, like our picture right here, are made up of a lot of different pieces, and we call those identities. So these identities can be things like your age, it can be your gender, your ability, it can be your race or ethnicity, it could be your culture. There's so many different pieces that make me, me, and they make you, you. And it makes us all different. And so that's the best part about it. So we're going to look and see at how some of these issues intersect together. So when looking at the Black Lives Matter movement, it is a movement because there's a lot of different people involved. A lot of people who have different identities are all coming together to fight for this cause, which is to advocate for all of these different issues under our umbrella here that we see on the screen. And so all of these issues intersect and they are all related to each other in some way or another. So these issues can look like safe neighborhoods and fair access to housing. It can be equity in education, disability and healthcare rights, freedom to be yourself and to express yourself freely. It can be equal treatment for all genders, and it can be things like environmental justice. And so I'm sure you've heard of environmentalism, another big word, but it's kind of looking at the environment, you know, our planet Earth and all the animals and plants that live there and all the ecosystems that live there. So environmental justice is a little different, but it looks at a type of environment called the built environment. There it is, B-U-I-L-T. It's kind of like building, and that's exactly what the built environment is. It's looking at all the buildings that we live in, work in, and play in, and we go to school in. So that is environmental justice. We're looking at that built environment and how people of different identities interact with that environment, and kind of what is fair and what is not fair about some of the things such as, you know, housing discrimination or job discrimination like we talked about earlier. So we're going to look at 3 different activists, and all of these activists were very active in St. Louis in the past. So the first woman we're going to look at is Victoria Clay Haley. What's my name, Victoria? But anyway, Victoria Clay Haley was an activist, a teacher, and a leader. She really advocated for women's rights at a time when women did not have many rights at all. She wanted women, and Black women in particular, to be able to vote in the United States. Because as we talked about before, the right to vote is one of the big rights that we have as US citizens. She was in leadership positions in many different organizations based in St. Louis, and those organizations had branches in other cities like Chicago or New York City, all over the US. And she helped to edit the newspaper articles for the St. Louis Afro-American News. And she made many other contributions to St. Louis through her advocacy and creating safe spaces for Black women to come and figure out ways how to become activists and how to support their community. So some of the intersectional issues she looked at were women's rights, voting rights, and rights for Black women in particular. Like, she kind of did early feminist work. And the next woman I will talk about is Frankie Freeman. So Frankie Freeman was an activist and a lawyer. So she fought against St. Louis housing discrimination. She fought against unfair hiring practices at Jefferson Bank that we talked about earlier. And she fought against unfair education in St. Louis City. She started her own law firm, and she worked with the NAACP. She also was appointed by President Carter to work at the White House with the federal government, and she helped people who had civil rights complaints, people who weren't being treated fairly. Maybe they tried to vote and people tried to block them from voting. So she helped people who had issues like that in their communities. And she was a lawyer for 50 years, 50. That's a long time, but she brought a lot of positive change to St. Louis and to the US overall. And the last activist I'll tell you all about today is Ivory Perry. And so Ivory Perry worked with Black people to make sure they had safe living conditions in the city. And this kind of goes back to the housing discrimination we talked about before, where Black people were only allowed to live in certain parts of the city. And so a lot of these houses, they had this kind of paint in them, which is called lead paint. And it was a really important discovery that he made, because when they started researching lead paint, they found that it was really, really bad, poisonous for young kids. And so growing up, if you're around the lead paint, it's really bad for your health. And so he used his voice, and he went to city leaders, and he shared his story. And he made sure that people knew this was happening so that it could be stopped. And so he got the city to pass a law on lead in homes in 1970. So that really wasn't that long ago. It was about 50 years ago. But he also advocated for fair housing and job treatment, and fair treatment from the police in the 1960s and 70s. So he made a lot of great change in St. Louis, and a lot of people joined in his protesting and organizing. And so some of his issues that intersect were housing rights, fair housing access, environmental justice that we talked about, that built environment, all the homes where people were living in. And he talked about other issues like police brutality and fair job access. So we just learned about 3 really cool activists that were active right here in St. Louis. So out of the 3, which ones would you like to learn more about? You can let us know in the chat box. Okay, I see some Ivory Perrys. Yeah, for sure. Frankie Freeman, yes, yes. Yeah. Okay, Ivory Perry. Awesome. Yeah, for sure. I would say whoever you want to learn about, and why not all of them? You could just go to Google, type in a quick search with your adult, and you can definitely learn a lot about their issues and the things they were passionate about and cared about in their communities, and about what they did and kind of the history. And that's really the history of St. Louis too. And for those who want to learn more about Ivory Perry, I know for sure in our Missouri History Museum, you can come by and we have some pretty good info on Ivory Perry and his work in St. Louis. So awesome. So we've learned a lot about different activists and the issues they cared about, how they intersected, and the actions they took. So let's think about what you care about. What problems do you see in your neighborhood, your community, or in the world that you would like to help solve? We are going to give you some tools and resources next to help you be an activist, because as we said before, it's never too early, it's never too late to be an activist. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend, Carla.
Okay, thanks, Victoria. Yeah, so we've learned a lot about different activists and some ways that they have taken action. So now you need to think about what do you care about? I have two questions here. And one is, what is an issue that you really care about? What is something maybe in your community or your neighborhood or even in the world or even in your school is something that you really care about and that would like to change or protest about? Maybe it's unfair and you want to change a policy. What is something you care about? Think about that and put it in the chat. What would be important to you? I see, equity in education. Yeah, that's something I really care about too. Very important to have equal education opportunities for all communities. Let's see, I'd like more books in my school with people who look like me. Oh, great, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit too. Okay, how about if you have an issue that you really care about, how can you be an activist for this issue? What can you do? What are some ways that you might take action? I see somebody wrote against, let's see, about discrimination against anyone that's in the LGBTQ community. Yeah, that might be something you can care about.
I also see equity in healthcare.
Oh, yep, equity in healthcare.
And like any discrimination against people who are different. These are all some really great answers.
Religions, different people of color, all of those. What would you do? What kind of action might you do or take? Have meetings to talk to people who want to work things out. Yeah, maybe with your peers or with people in your neighborhood or community. Great. What else? Telling people about it. Yeah, just telling people about it. You can either post something on social media or you might tell people about it in person. Maybe just tell your friends. Tell people in your family. All right. Well, we're going to talk about some different ways that, that you can be an activist. Feel free to keep typing in the chat. All right. few more seconds on that. What is something you might do? Talk to someone in charge. Yeah, you could talk to maybe a parent or a teacher. All right, let's go on to our next slide then. All right, so kids can be activists too. So maybe you've heard of people like Malala, who is from Pakistan, who has advocated for education for girls, or maybe Greta Thunberg, who has advocated against for climate change and for saving the environment. She's led marches and given lots of speeches. Here you can see some pictures of some kids who maybe were in a protest or a march and some signs that they made. Now I'm going to tell you about a few other people that have taken action for things that they saw that were unfair. The first one is someone named Sage Grace Dolan Sandriano, and she was a transgender activist who came out at age 13 and found she did not receive any support from her school, her middle school. So she invited the Human Rights Campaign to come to her school and teach her school how to make it a safer place for all students like her in the LGBTQIA community. She continues to advocate for trans rights through various means, and she's written lots of articles for Teen Vogue on transgender issues. Let's see, the second one is someone named Isra Hersey, who she was an activist. Actually, she started when she was just 6 years old, attending protests with her mother and supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. But then when she became a teenager, she was really interested in environmental justice and how climate change disproportionately affects Black, Brown, and Indigenous people and people from low-income communities. She founded a nonprofit and has led several marches on the issue. One thing she does care about is the water crisis in Flint, Michigan, which is, you can see a picture of the dirty water there. They've had a lot of issues with their water. And then the last one is Marley Dias, or Dias. She was an activist for Black female representation. When she was 11 years old, she complained to her mom that all the books that they were reading in school were about boys or dogs. And so she thought that was wrong, and she wanted to see more books that featured Black females. So she started a campaign, a book drive called 1,000 Black Girl Books with some of her friends to find books for her school and for another country. So they tried to raise 1,000 books, and they actually ended up raising about 9,000 books. And they donated some of those to a school in Jamaica. Okay, so one of the ways to be an activist is to communicate your message through a sign. There's lots of different ways. And like Ellie mentioned before, you don't have to march in the streets or lay down on the sidewalk. There are lots of different things that you can do to be an activist. Going to protests is one of them. Making art, writing poetry, advocating on social media, just teaching your friends, and writing letters can be different ways that you can share your message. And one way is to create a poster. So we'll go to the next slide. So you can create a poster with different slogans, which are just different phrases or short messages or symbols to share what you're passionate about or what you want to change. So here's just some examples. I've also made some examples. You can see there's a peace sign that I drew. And one thing I'm passionate about is education for all people, no matter what community you live in. So quality education for all. Okay, so now we're ready to create your own poster. So this is pretty easy to do. All you really need is any paper or cardboard, anything to write on with markers, crayons, pencils, paint, you name it. You can even use stickers. If you want to make it a sign to hold up in a march, you can attach a paint stick or a paper towel tube. Or you can make a body sign by punching holes in it and adding some string or yarn, and wear it as you march. So when you create your own poster, think about the issue that you were passionate about, something you wanted to see change or that you want to advocate for, and then make your poster. And you don't have to do this, but if you would like, we would love to see what you can come up with. You can tag us at #MHSLearn and let us see what you come up with. It can even be a poem or another piece of artwork. So we would love to see it. So now I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah, who's going to give you some resources and wrap us up.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all so much for staying with us through this program and learning about all of this. We really appreciate you being here. But as you know, this doesn't stop here. This is, in fact, just the beginning. So we would love for you to continue the conversation. So parents, please stick around for the conversation after. I am about to drop the Zoom link. This will be a meeting-based webinar. So there will be cameras on, we can talk, and we will have Tabari Coleman there who will help facilitate the conversation on the current events, a chance to kind of share our emotions and kind of think about how we can talk about this with our kids. So parents, please stick around. And I am now going to put that Zoom in the chat. So beyond that, we want you to check back. We're going to be creating a care package with different resources of organizations in St. Louis, different pieces of information that you can use to help educate yourself and to educate others on these topics about race. And this has also been recorded. So we are going to put this on YouTube for you to look at again. Also, please continue to check mohistory.org. I put that link earlier on the chat with all of the rest of the events for this series. So please come back and visit us again. Once again, we want to thank you all so much. I'm going to give another minute for you all to get that link and to copy it and head over there. And hopefully we will see you all in the next meeting. Thank you all once again and have a fantastic rest of your day.